When have you witnessed sweet justice? I work as a manager at a restaurant, and one night I had a guest loudly telling his server that if his fries were cold, he was going to send them back, so she'd better make sure it was hot. I made sure his fries were straight out of the deep fryer and I personally brought out his meal. I guess all the other tables seated around him were watching to see his reaction after his loud performance, that he would send his food back. So I put the meal down, and he took one look and dramatically sighed and said the fries were cold. I replied, "I'm sorry sir, but they're not." Now he's mad and loudly said, "They're cold. I can tell just by looking at them." I replied again, "The fries are hot." So he says, "Oh really?" He dramatically picked up a fry and held it between his thumb and forefinger. He held it in front of his own face while locking eyes with me and squeezed his fingers together. What came next was something that continues to fill my heart with joy 6 years after it happened. He let out a surprised shout of pain and dropped the fry onto the table. The tables around us who had been watching started laughing and clapping. His face turned red. He put his head down and didn't say another word. I just smiled and said, "Enjoy your meal," and walked away. When I drive to Richmond, I tend to run into some traffic, especially after dark. A lot of people will try to drive on the shoulder to get around the traffic. On 3 separate occasions, I've seen 18-wheelers drive halfway on the shoulder just to cut them off. It's glorious. This is a story that A. Gill wrote about in his book The Angry Island. So not mine, but it is wonderful. At a ski lift in Switzerland, the gondolas to the mountain top hold about 4 people and the skiers are required to clip their skis to the outside before sitting down inside. There is a long queue of English skiers, patiently as is the British thing of waiting their turn to catch the next lift. 4 German skiers turn up and barge past the queue laughing at the English and take the next gondola as it arrives. The English tourists are too polite to do anything other than mutter under their collective breaths, while the Germans point and laugh from inside. Just as the gondola is about to depart, a man about halfway down the queue calmly walks up to the gondola and unclips the queue barge's skis and places them on the platform. The Germans can only splutter in rage as the gondola starts its inexorable climb to the mountain top without their skis. I had a lady spill her drink in my store and didn't try to clean it up. She simply looked at me and said, "Well, at least now you'll have something to do." She was about to reach the door when she dropped her phone. When she reached down to get it, her pants ripped. Like, no salvation kind of ripped. I just stood there with my mop and shrugged at her. I used to work on one of the rides at Rainforest Cafe. They have a mini boat ride you can go on and ride through an animatronic jungle with narrative playing on the speakers. The boats have a weight limit, so we can only let a certain amount of people on, and bigger people tend to make the boat lean to one side. Well, one day this family 4-5 pretty big people want to ride all together. We try to explain to them that we have to split them up because the boats tend to take on water when overcrowded. One lady took extreme offensive to us calling her fat, which we didn't. But hey, who are we kidding here? Raised heck and chewed into my co-worker's ass, caused a bit of a scene, and demanded that they all ride on the boat together. I'm operating the ride and the employee on the other side looks to me, and I give him the nod. Well, they all load onto the boat, which rests on a conveyor belt. I start the belt up, and the boat drops into the river with a big splash. Some of the people inside get wet, and some water fills into the boat. Miraculously they are still floating on the ride. We have cameras to see into the jungle to see if someone gets out and messes with the animatronics. As I'm watching them, I see the boat start getting lower and lower, when all of a sudden, the boat begins taking on water like the Titanic. All you can hear are screams blaring over the rolling thunder and animal soundtracks. We had to stop the entire ride and go out to the river to find them all soaking wet and embarrassed as heck, and had to do the walk of shame in front of others waiting to ride. The boat, by the way, sunk to the bottom of the river, and the ride had to be shut down until we got it out. River is about 4 or 5 foot deep. I've posted this before. but I had 3 shitheads run out on the check while I was working an overpass shift at a diner. Well, they were pissing off some EMTs that came in regularly, but I couldn't kick them out until they became seriously disruptive. Eventually, they did sprayed ketchup everywhere. I found out later one of them pissed all over the men's room, and as I was going up to them to tell them to get the duck out, they booked it. I would have been responsible for their 50 tab. I made 80 that night. The EMTs were pissed at the disruption, and some of them left early on a call. Well, I called the cops on the walkout, and they showed up, but very little could be done, except the EMTs spotted them, radioed the cops, and they were all brought back to the restaurant to settle the tab and receive a lecture on tipping for services rendered. One of the kids asked if he could use the phone. I denied him, with a laugh, and when he asked the cop for a ride, he laughed at him, too, and stated, "No a-hole here, kid. You're hoofing it." Needless to say, I bought every EMT still in the place their dinner, and footed the bill for the people that had left already the next time they came around. Working in the produce department years ago, we would have children come through all the time and smash fruit and wreck our displays. This was pretty common, and since this was a Walmart, the parents never seemed to care. Well, one day this little hole is going right on down the wet case, smashing up everything he can get his tiny hands on. Cucumbers, lettuce, kale, throwing turnips, etc. His mom is there and sees what he is doing and makes absolutely no effort to try and stop it. The other employees and I were just standing there watching all this happen, because we really can't scold the customer or her kid. Anyways, the kid reaches the hot pepper section, jalapenos, serranos, habaneros, and starts mashing them up in his hands. Now at this point we all saw what he was doing and could have stopped it, but screw it. This kid is going to learn a life lesson. The mom and the son finally leave the fresh area and walk on down towards the rest of the grocery store. About 5 minutes after they leave, an unholy shrieking pierces through the entire store. The little guy must have rubbed his eyes. We all went down to take a peek, and this kid was in the middle of the aisle, writhing on the floor and screaming like he was being murdered. The mother had no idea what was going on, and absolutely nothing would console him. She ended up leaving her cart there and dragging her kid out while yelling at him to shut up. Wash your hands after you handle hot peppers, folks. When I was younger, like somewhere between 5-7 years old, I had one of those very realistic looking baby doll toys that had a soft body but had hard plastic vinyl arms, legs, and head. I took it nearly everywhere with me, except for elementary school, as that just wasn't allowed because my mom didn't want it to get ruined. Well, one day I'm out shopping with my mom at the grocery store like I normally did with her. I'd put baby clothes on the doll, buckled it into the little seat for kids in the top of the shopping cart, and was helping mom push the cart around like that. We go about our shopping just fine. But the moment that we are about to leave with our groceries, some random lady shows up and starts screaming at my mom for leaving her baby in the cart and how she's going to call Child Protective Services on her for it. A small crowd started up around us, and my mom got really angry and didn't know what the lady was talking about until she pointed at the doll in the cart. It was still buckled in the seat. I had apparently forgotten to take the doll out of the cart, and being a kid at the time, I didn't understand the big deal. I just went up to the cart and proceeded to rip the doll's head off and said, "Lady, it's not a real baby. It's my dolly." She screamed loudly, stared, got red-faced, and then split instantly after she realized her mistake. The crowd disappeared, and my mom was just chuckling a little as she dragged me off to the car with our groceries and headed on home. My mother was leaving a parking lot in the right-hand lane, preparing to turn right. A teenage kid and his buddies pulls up in the lane to her left. As soon as the light turns green, the kid hammers the gas and turns right in front of her. A couple miles down the road, she sees the kid at an intersection, standing on the side of the road arguing with another driver. The right side of the kid's car is crumpled around the front end of the other driver's car. She puts on her emergency blinkers and parks behind the accident. She approaches the other driver, who looks distraught because, since his front end is sticking out of the kid's car's side, the accident sort of looks like his fault. By any chance, were you in the right lane when this guy decided to make a right turn in front of you? Other driver brightens up. Yeah. That's exactly what happened. He pulled the same stunt on me a minute ago. Here's my card. I'll be happy to tell your insurance company what he was doing. Young punk and his buddies tell my mother to mind her own business as she walks back to her car and drives away. I was in line at the Deli counter a few weeks ago. It had one of those number ticket systems, take a number now serving number. This old guy drives up on his little handicap scooter and demands to be served next, even though I'm the one with the lowest number. Deli guy looks at me. The scooter guy starts to raise his voice. At this point what started as amusement has turned to annoyance and I just crumple up my ticket and go do the rest of my shopping. When I'm through, I go back to the deli counter and the guy working there smiles at me, points towards the front of the store, and tells me they just caught the scooter guy shoplifting. I watch as the police come and wheel the bastard away. Consider subscribing if you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more of Reddit Universe.